Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Sanctuary. It is week 8. We are live. We are here to cover every single one of your fantasy football questions, be that dynasty, redraft, or even DFS. We are going to walk through every single matchup for this week's slate, covering all those key questions. And of course, every single one of your questions. If you want to get your questions in live, we will answer 100% of the questions that come in. And even if you're not watching us live, you can still get your questions in the comments below, and we will answer 100% of those questions as we go. We're going to dive straight into the first matchup, but eagle-eyed viewers will have realised Tom has changed slightly. He is on a holiday sunning himself. So stepping in, I've got the fantastic Matt, as you probably know him, Matt FF Dynasty. Matt, how are you doing?
Yeah, really well. Thanks, Rich. Obviously a privilege to come on and talk to you. It's a shame that we haven't got Tom here, but I'll do my best to fill his boots the best I can.
I couldn't think of anyone better to step in. And also, double eagle-eyed viewers would spot I'm not at home. I'm currently fulfilling every single content creator's dream. I'm YouTubing live from my parents' basement. So yeah, I feel like I've now ticked that stereotype box. But let's dive into the main slate. So look, this is, it feels like we talked about last week being a terror slate and there being so many low over-unders. And then I was putting together the show this week and I was like, man, this is even worse than last week. It's like, yes, we've got a full slate. There's no bye weeks and it's just terrible. This is probably the best match of the lot. So we've got the Rams at the Cowboys. Feels like it's kind of two potentially juicy offenses, but two potential offenses that have got hurdles that they just can't seem to get over at the moment. Is there anyone that you particularly love or anyone that you think needs to show something this week, Matt?
I mean, Rich, I've got to say, what a way to start the show as well. Getting to talk about the Rams. You know, there's a guy on this Rams offense that I have a great affection for. It's funny that we actually did a show together, didn't we, Rich? The sleeper show before the NFL season kicked off, and I had the chance to talk about this guy, Puka Nacua. I mean, it's great that I can do my little victual lap, come on this show and get my victual lap in early. But yeah, Puka Nacua, what he's done has been unbelievable. As much as I say that I love Puka Nacua, he's just exceeded all expectation, I think. And you mentioned about this matchup. Obviously, it doesn't look great on paper in terms of, you mentioned the offense, two good offense here, but as well, two good defenses. We know Dallas have looked pretty good on defense. The Rams as well look pretty good against the pass as well. So potentially a trade-off against the offense and defense. I still like Puka Nacua in terms of that target rate. You've got it there on the slide showing that even with Cooper Kupp back, he's still averaging 10 targets with the Kupp's return. And I think this offense with Kupp and Nacua, it's great for Matthew Stafford having those two elite options. So it's a game I'm definitely interested in. As you mentioned, the slate doesn't look too great, and obviously going to talk about that a little later on, but I am excited to see Puka Nacua. I think with those short targets, I think he's going to get peppered again in this game. I think it's going to be a game where both teams are going to pass plenty. So yeah, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, a really interesting one.
Yeah, it feels like this Rams offense, Nakua's been phenomenal. Kupp's produced fantastically since he's been back. Stafford from certainly an eye-watching perspective has been phenomenal, but the counting numbers haven't been there. You can see on the screen 2.7% touchdown rate. He's basically been playing phenomenally, but just not getting the ball in the red zone, in the end zone. So I do think this Rams offense has potentially got another gear, particularly in that passing game, to kind of kick on. The big question about the Rams offense, though, is around, that man, Darrell Henderson, Kyren Williams, obviously on IR. Henderson's come in, looked, I thought, more spry than he did basically the entirety of last season and maybe the year before. Is he a guy you think you can trust, should we say, in that sort of RB2, maybe flex territory this week, or is that a little bit too rich?
As I say, I think it's a tough one. The matchup doesn't look great on paper going up against the Cowboys. And I think as well, Royce Freeman, you didn't mention him there. I think he actually looked pretty good as well last week. Obviously didn't get all the hype that Henderson got, but when he got his touches, he looked pretty good as well running the ball. So I'm not sure if maybe the Rams do look to maybe form some kind of committee. And obviously when Williams was healthy, McVay mentioned about trying to reduce his touches a little bit because he was getting all of the ball carries at one point. And I feel like maybe McVay's seeing that he's got these two guys here. I think they are going to look to split the workload. So in turn, it does make it hard to trust Henderson, as I say, with the matchup as well. Is somebody I'm not going to be super excited about, but looking in DFS, 4,800, I think that's pretty fair value, to be honest, for a running back that could see plenty of opportunities.
Yeah, I think for me, I've got him in the mid 30s. I think he's probably a little bit should we call it RB3 territory for me.
Yeah.
Moving across to the Dallas side of the ball, there's the two superstars, the two studs. We've got CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard, obviously both top, should we say, 16 picks in best ball in the offseason. But it feels like they've shown flashes. They've had good games, but haven't consistently put it together. You can see CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 21 in points per game. Tony Pollard, his breakaway run percentage is massively down. He's still doing as efficient, as impressive missed tackles forced in the passing game. But in terms of running the ball, he's just not been efficient. Are those guys, are you expecting more, or do you think this is what we should expect for them for the rest of the season?
I'm very hopeful like yourself, Rich. I know that you've always been high on CeeDee Lamb as well. Tony Pollard looked great last year. Is it a little bit, maybe, obviously we all wanted Zeke to go away and stop stealing touches, but I know we both mentioned during the offseason, is that maybe a good thing for Tony Pollard, having such a great workload? We know how great he is when he comes in as that spell back, maybe gives Zeke a rest, and he comes in and he's that explosive back. As you mentioned, he's kind of just lost that little bit of explosiveness that we saw last year. So I am slightly concerned that we're not going to get that true Tony Pollard breakout that we kind of hope for. But at the same time, the opportunity he's getting is obviously far greater this season, going up against the Rams. As I say, this feels like the game that I'm probably going to target the most, even though it is two tough defenses. I think the offenses, when they click, they can be two high-scoring offenses. So Tony Pollard, I'm hopeful he can take a step forward, and CeeDee Lamb as well. He had a great game last week, and I feel like he's gonna start bouncing back, and hopefully with the targets that he gets, can start to improve on that wide receiver 21 in points per game.
Yeah, my final little hat tip, shall we say, in this matchup, I really like Jake Ferguson this week. The Rams are 30th in adjusted fantasy points allowed. Jake Ferguson's getting consistent volume. He's getting red zone targets. He's just not kind of fully put it all together and broke out. It does feel like he's due some regression in that department. So hopefully this is the matchup where we could see a really big Jake Ferguson blowout, shall we say. Moving ahead to the next matchup, another potential meaty division rivals, could be a high-scoring affair. We've got Minnesota at Green Bay. Let's start on the Minnesota side of the ball. We can start with Michael Jordan Addison. Wide receiver 13 overall. Appreciate a lot of that is kind of buoyed by a really impressive 2-touchdown performance last week. Let's go dynasty, Matt. Is Jordan Addison now creeping into that top 12 range for you?
I think he has to, Rich. I know you mentioned you've been high on Addison, and your kind of love for him kind of drew me in a little bit more as well. And it's been great to see what he's been able to do, both with Justin Jefferson there and when he's not been there, the fact that he has managed to step up and be that guy when called upon. So, yeah, Addison's shown me so much this season on the small sample size that we've had. And, yeah, I think you've got it right there, superstar. I think he's destined to be that superstar. We talk about guys like T. Higgins, who's a wide receiver 2 on offense, and the greatness he can have. I feel like Addison's got to be in that bracket, if not even higher, given the fact that the Vikings are throwing the ball plenty. He's in a great situation, and for this moment in time, he's the wide receiver 1 on this offense. So, yeah, love him in Dynasty. I think he's got to be top 12 for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I've got him 16 at the moment. I'm sort of scratching my head. I'm really struggling ranking him, T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, Drake London. Like he's in that bucket at the moment. How they kind of mesh out, I can't really get my head around it at the moment. But the other big receiving piece that is healthy, TJ Hawkinson, he's the tight end 3 in fantasy at the moment in terms of points per game. Okay, that's kind of where he was drafted. That's what we all expected. That's what we all hoped. But it feels like he's not really the tight end 3. It's sort of Andrews and Kelsey are tiers above. If you want to throw Laporta in there, fine. But I'm saying he's only 13.7 points per game. It feels like there's more to come from this. Do you think that Hawkinson's perhaps overhyped and sort of almost overvalued because he's not giving you the difference making at the position as much as he is tight end 3? The gap's not that big, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. Obviously, tight ends, we hate them, don't we? Let's be honest. In terms of fantasy, there's such a confusing position, such a tough one to break down. I think when it comes to tight end, if you've got a guy that's seeing volume, they automatically get bumped up in rankings because tight ends are such an unknown quantity. They do give you those bust weeks every now and again. And when you've got a guy like Hawkinson who's seeing plenty of targets, especially with Justin Jefferson out, he automatically gets risen in rankings. But I do get what you're saying when you look at it from a points per game standpoint. Even though he is the tight end 3, he's nowhere near a guy like Travis Kelce. Obviously, what he's doing at the moment is amazing. But then, like you mentioned, Mark Andrews as well. They're two guys that are difference makers. Whereas Hawkinson, he's more of like a volume play. I think he's seen the volume, but we've not really had that boom from him yet. That, to be honest, I'd expect from an offense that's throwing the ball so much. He's just not really giving us those big weeks. So, yeah, I think personally he is maybe a little bit overvalued, because in Dynasty he's probably right up there with Andrews and Travis Kelce because of his age and, as I say, the volume that he's getting. But for me personally, I still think those two guys are clear of Hawkinson. And yeah, personally, I'd say maybe he's a touch overvalued in Dynasty.
Yeah, and then the running back situation in Minnesota, it's just, I'm tearing my hair out with it at the moment. Every week I feel like, right, okay, Cam Akers has been put to the side, Mattison's the guy. And then last week it was basically a 50-50 backfield. It just seems like they're just trying to toy with us and not going to make up their mind. I certainly can't touch, Mattison maybe is like a flex play, but I just don't want any part of this backfield. It feels horrendous right now.
Yeah.
Moving across the other side of the game, let's start with Aaron Jones. It feels like Green Bay is a completely different offense when Aaron Jones is healthy and firing. Do you think we're going to see that this week? It felt like he was eased back in last week. Do you think they're going to give him the kind of full truckload of carries?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off, as you mentioned, when he is healthy and on the field, we know what he can do. Week 1, he finishes the RB1, so it shows that when he is fit and healthy, the involvement that he's going to get in this offense, but he's probably still one of the best pass-catching weapons for the Packers at the moment. So when he's fully healthy, he's going to be great for fantasy. But as you mentioned last week, it did just feel like the reason him back in. I was a bit upset because obviously coming off the bye week, I thought that was going to give him that bit of rest that he needed, that extra week of rest, and he would come back and see the workload that he saw week 1, but sadly didn't. As you say, I think he was kind of just getting eased back in. I feel like he is getting there, and hopefully this can be the week that he does get back, because if he is back to 100% and does get that involvement, he's got a great matchup against the Vikings. We know the potential ceiling with his receptions as well for PPR. So yeah, I love Aaron Jones, especially in Dynasty. If you're a win now team, he's someone that I will probably be targeting on a buy low. I know obviously it's coming back. People are starting to get a little bit of excitement for him, but with that past week of being a bit of a dud, maybe you've still got that little window to go out and grab him. So yeah, love him for this week. I think if he does get that workload, he's going to be pretty good for fantasy this week.
Yeah, I love that shout. And look, I'm not a Christian Watson believer. I feel like I slate him a lot. I'm going to leave it over to you, Matt. Do you think that 5,100, he's getting just over 5 targets a game? Is there any kind of, I guess, trust you can put in him at the moment?
I mean, if you've passed the question on to me, Rich, hoping that I would maybe do a little bit more than what you would, it's not going to happen. I myself have not been a Christian Watson guy right from the get-go, to be honest. My former co-host, Kev, he really liked Christian Watson, but I just can't seem to get on board with him. I think it just feels like one of those typical boom-bust players, like you mentioned, with the targets. He's not getting that healthy target share. He's not seeing plenty of targets, as I mentioned, with someone like Aaron Jones when he comes back as well. That's going to make things even more difficult for Watson. So, yeah, personally, he's maybe somebody that in a GPP kind of game. So if you're looking for that Hail Mary kind of play, then I think Watson could be someone that you could target, because the price point isn't too bad. But it's too hard for me to trust Watson in this offense as well.
It feels like the offense isn't good enough to sustain all of the options. You got Watson, you got Dubs, you got Reed, you got Musgrave, you got Jones, you got AJ Dillon still floating around. It's like there's such a volume of good offensive weapons that Jordan Love's not good enough to sustain all of them, and none of them are great enough to kind of stand above the others. So it's just like, some of them are going to have good weeks, some of them are going to have bad weeks, but trying to put it all together is a little bit challenging, shall we say. If you are here, though, if you are watching live, get those questions in the comments below. If you're watching on pre-recorded, you can still get your questions in the comments. We answer 100% of the questions we get. Matt, we have got a question from Thomas. He's saying he's got half-point PPR, needs to pick 2 running backs, 1 wide receiver. So we've got Aaron Jones, Mattison, or Mixon. So I guess sit one of those and then Pittman or Goodwin. Who you sitting?
Tough one in terms of 2 running backs. I think, like we just mentioned with Aaron Jones, I think if he is back healthy, and I feel like this could be the week, he's got to be a start for me. The one running back that I'll be sitting out of those, it's got to be Mattison. We touched upon it he's the one that I'm really struggling to trust in this backfield, with Cam Akers this past week looking a little bit more involved. And to be honest, I thought he looked the better running back out of the two. So, the sit would be Madison in terms of running backs. Wide receivers a little bit more tricky because these are two guys that have seen a healthy amount of targets throughout the season. Pittman looked like he was going to be on for a bad week last week until he had that huge touchdown. I know all about it because I faced him in a couple of leagues, so I know all about that big touchdown. But I think Pittman and his involvement, I slightly lean towards Pittman. I think his ceiling's potentially a little bit higher than Chris Godwin, who's seen the targets, but we've yet to really have that big week, obviously going up against the Bills as well. A little bit of a tough matchup. So, yeah, I'll lean Pittman in terms of the wide receiver.
Yeah, so I'd definitely sit Matheson. I think it depends what I want. I think Godwin is the safe, boring. He'll probably get you somewhere between 8 to 10 points in half PPR, and you probably feel okay with it. He's not going to burn you, but he's probably not going to win you the week. Whereas I think Pittman could easily burn you or could easily catch, 1 for 70 yards and take it to the house and win you the week. So, yeah, I think it depends what I'm looking for there as to where I go. The next matchup, we're heading down south, Atlanta at Tennessee. I guess, look, let's start with the big headline. Bijan Robinson burnt so many people last week. Can you trust him? Do you think he's someone that is he a plug and play RB1 like we thought he was going to be all year?
I mean, this has got to be the biggest talking point, I think, of this past week. Twitter exploded, to be honest, with the sheer frustration of what was happening with Bijan Robinson. I think overall, I'm going to give benefit of the doubt. I think we can trust Bijan Robinson. We've seen that his floor, it looks pretty good in terms of what he can do with fantasy. The fact that he's involved in the receiving game. It's a shame we're not getting that workhorse role that I think we all expected. Maybe you could say he's been a little bit of a disappointment this year in terms of what we expected out of what we're getting. But I think the floor is there for Bijan Robinson. And if he can command this backfield, which I think he can, to be honest, over time, I think he will become the lead back in this backfield. I'm going to say we can trust Bijan Robinson, despite everything that happened last week, despite that Arthur Smith is trying to destroy all fantasy players' hope in this offense. I think we can trust Bijan Robinson. I think it's still a lot to be an RB1 in fantasy this week.
Yeah, I think you can trust him to an extent. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if the Titans go kind of Bill Belichick-esque and just load the box and say, you know what, if we're going to lose this game, Desmond Ridder's going to beat us. And I think that I wouldn't be shocked if we see a huge amount of 7-8 men in the box and say, right, we'll give you one-on-one on the outside. Desmond Ridder, try and see what you can do, kind of thing. So yeah, hopefully Arthur Smith and Bijan and they can use him all around the field in interesting ways, and he can still get that volume. But yeah, I'm nervous. He's not in my top 12 this week. I think I've got him running back 14, something like that. So yeah, I'm still starting him if you got him. You've probably the capital you spent on him. You got to start him. You can't bench him. But yeah, not feeling hugely confident. Diving across the Tennessee side of the ball, it feels like if there's going to be one team that's a big seller, we've already seen it with the trade, the safety, the Kevin Byard. Could we see Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins traded? And if so, double-edged question here, Matt. Is there any players that you're targeting, whether that be Henry or Nuke, if they are landing new homes, or a player on the Titans that you think could be undervalued right now?
Yeah, well, I think I'll start by saying I think you're definitely right that the Titans have to look to move these players, as you mentioned. It looks like they're kind of heading in that direction, looking to sell some of these aging veterans. I think in guys like Derrick Henry and Nuke Hopkins, two elite wide receivers and running backs at their positions, I think both need to be trade targets for teams, even despite the fact they're getting up there in age. So I think there's definitely going to be a market for him. I know I've seen Tom tweet out just today. There was rumours, weren't there, about him going to the Ravens. Tom was quick to shut that one down in terms of who was putting out that kind of...
Tom and his sources.
He was quick to shoot down that source. But I think that could be a potential nice landing spot if it was to happen. But not too sure on the likelihood. But in terms of who to target in Dynasty, I actually tweeted about it at the start of the week. I think Tajay Spears is somebody that in Dynasty I'm definitely looking to try and acquire before we get that news of Derrick Henry moving. I know you probably already missed the boat because people are starting to get a bit of wind of what could potentially be happening, and we've seen flashes from Tajay Spears. But what he did in London, that London game, he had that great reception that he nearly got over the goal line. Looked great. he's looked great in those flashes. If we can get that expanded workload for Tajay Spears, I think he could look great in this Tennessee offense. I know that the O-line isn't too great and obviously a different player to Derrick Henry, but in fantasy, the way that he's being used with the receptions and running the ball as well, an expanded role for him could be great. So he's somebody I'm definitely looking to target. And in terms of Henry and Nuke Hopkins, both not really somebody I'm super excited about, but Derrick Henry, I think running backs, we know how frustrating they can be, how they can come and go, but we know how great Derrick Henry is. It's a short-term investment in Dynasty, so it is a win now kind of move, but he's somebody I'm still potentially interested in, but I mean, the landing spot's going to dictate how we're interested in him.
Yeah, I've been trying to bang the drum for Tajay Spears as a buy because Derrick Henry's gone at the end of this year, so I think that even if he doesn't get traded, he's still a great buy because I think this is going to be his backfield next year. The other big talking point in Tennessee is obviously the quarterback situation. Ryan Tannehill, high ankle sprain, looking like he's probably going to miss a few weeks. Now, the rumors are that they're apparently going to start both. They were going to have a 2-quarterback system. I presume I'm reading between the lines of saying that means they're going to start Will Levis, but they'll have kind of a package of plays for Malik Willis. Do you have any interest in trying to start Will Levis? I guess in a tournament play for DFS, if you're trying to be really ultra contrarian, can you build some sort of super stack around Levis Hopkins with like a London or Pitts bring back maybe?
I mean, potentially, definitely. I think that'd definitely be a unique way of approaching a lineup in DFS. For me personally, it's tough to trust Will Levis. I don't know what you were like. I can't remember Rich in terms of a prospect, but he wasn't really a guy that I was super into. And obviously fell to day 2 as well, which in terms of Dynasty was a bit of a blow for his value. But I'm glad to see that he's finally getting that opportunity. We kind of thought that it could potentially happen if Tannehill struggled, but it's actually come through an injury. But I'm interested to see how he performs against the Falcons in his debut. As you mentioned, it sounds like it's going to be a bit of a confusing thing, but I think you're spot on in terms of it. I think it's going to be Will Levis as the starter, Malik Willis coming in around the goal line, some kind of packages, running the ball, maybe lining up in the running back position, who knows? But I think Will Levis is going to be the starter, and it's going to be interesting to see how he performs. I'm not in on him, to be honest, Rich. This offense hasn't looked great with Tannehill at quarterback. So with a rookie that's yet to play in the NFL, I won't be leaping to get Levis in my lineup, put it that way.
No, I think this week might be a stretch. I still think he's massively undervalued in Dynasty. I think I've talked about it a couple of times so far in this kind of season. I think people have forgotten about him as a rookie quarterback. I think this time next year, he's going to be the nailed-on starter in Tennessee. I think there's no doubt about that. And I think that you can probably acquire him for kind of a mid to late second right now. And as soon as he becomes a starter, he's worth a back end first. So, I think he's massively undervalued. And I think he'd be a sensible player to go and see if you can target in that sort of, I need a quarterback this week, so I'll buy him cheap, when actually he is a long-term starter. Another slightly more interesting matchup. We've got New Orleans at the Colts. Let's start with New Orleans. Derek Carr, it feels like there's an issue. I presume that the shoulder's not healthy. He's not pushing the ball downfield. He's got a career low 6.3 yards per attempt. He's targeting Alvin Kamara almost 10 times a game. Do you think it's just a case of this is now a boring offense and we're going to not see the volume for Chris Olave downfield that we hoped we would see?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Rich. I feel personally like Carr isn't maybe over that shoulder injury, and the fact that he's targeting Alvin Kamara so much kind of points towards that. He's using him as that safety valve, which is obviously great if you've got Alvin Kamara in Dynasty in your weekly matchups. He's getting plenty of targets, so PPR leagues, he's giving you that super safe floor. But in terms of the entire offense, I'm really struggling to get behind it, which is a shame because Chris Olave looked so incredible to start the year. Last year as well, he looked great. I thought this was really going to be that breakout year for him. So it's been a shame to see him kind of reduce his role a little bit throughout this season. So in terms of the offense, I'm finding it really hard at the moment to get excited by anyone outside of Alvin Kamara based purely on those amounts of targets that he's getting now he's back. So it's not really an offense I'm looking to invest in too much in terms of Dynasty.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm breaking the third curtain here with Dynasty talk or fantasy talk, but Taysom Hill is tight in 10 of the last 3 weeks. Have you got any interest at all in starting him in a managed league right now?
I absolutely hate Taysom Hill, Rich. I can't stress enough.
That's why I brought him up.
For fantasy, Rich, he is the most frustrating player you'll ever come across in fantasy. I've got him in so many leagues because when he got eligible to start as a tight end, I had that little bit of an interest because I thought he's a guy who obviously plays quarterback. They've got these unique packages for him. It could be interesting in a tight end as a tight end position with that availability. Yeah, it looks great some weeks. Some weeks he can put up the numbers with his rushing when he throws the ball, with the receptions. But just relying on when those weeks are going to happen is next to impossible. You just don't seem to know. I feel like these past couple of weeks have been because Juwan Johnson's been out. He's now looking to get back to full health. So what this role looks like for Taysom Hill moving forward, I don't know. So unless I see it again with all the tight ends available and Taysom Hill is still being used as a tight end, maybe he can start feeling a little bit more comfortable. But for me, he's purely a best ball. I think in best ball is amazing for that kind of format because you don't need to worry about when to start him. You can just take those boom weeks when they come. But in terms of actually putting him into my lineups, no, he's just sat there on my bench. I don't want to drop him because I know he's got those boom weeks in him. But at the same time, I just can't force myself to put him in the lineup. So until I see it on a more reliable, on a more frequent basis, yeah, he's staying on my bench.
Actually, I think in managed leagues, he's a complete roster clogger.
Yeah,
I got a scary high amount of Taysom Hill in best ball, I have to say, which at the moment is looking quite nice. But yeah, it's not the greatest thing. Moving across the Indianapolis side of the ball, look, it feels like Jonathan Taylor is back. It feels like last week that torch was handed. I think that if you watch the game, it sort of started off right. We'll still split it, but moving forward, it was Jonathan Taylor carrying the ball, and this offense went through Jonathan Taylor at 6,200. You know, that's 1,800 cheaper than Saquon Barkley. It feels like this could be the last week you can get Jonathan Taylor at a discount. Am I crazy talk, or do you think that this is a smash Jonathan Taylor week?
Yeah, I hate to echo the same comments, Rich, but I think you're absolutely spot on with that. This feels like the last chance we're going to get Jonathan Taylor at such a cheap price in DFS. I fully agree with you. I think this is now going to become Jonathan Taylor's backfield again. As you mentioned, it was actually pretty much a bang-on 50-50 split in terms of snap percentage for him and Zach Moss, but as you said, I feel like as the game went on, it seemed to be more of Jonathan Taylor getting the opportunities. He was more efficient in the touches that he had as well. And while Moss has been great in his absence, I think JT's back now, and we know what a study is. They've paid him that big contract. They're going to want to see a return on that money that they've invested in him. So, yeah, fully agree. This feels like the last week we're going to get him at such a great value because I think moving forward, he's going to see his snap percentage, get up towards the 70-75% range.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Josh Downs, I talked about him on the Tuesday show, so I'm not going to dive into too much detail here, but wide receiver 11 the last 3 weeks, he is truly broken out, and it feels like he's still currently undervalued in whatever format you're talking about, because the guys just be using when Gardner Minshew's under center and Gardner Minshew's going nowhere for the next few weeks. Diving across, this feels like a really big matchup. New England coming off that, big divisional win. Miami getting their hearts broken because they can't beat a team with a winning record. Is this a massive bounce back week for Miami and all the exciting weapons that they do hold?
Yeah, I think it has to be, doesn't it? I think Miami are going to look to bounce back from that previous week. We know that the weapons that they've got on offense. It's been a funny week this past week with the mention of Tyreek Hill in it. We kind of got that feeling that he was going to be out for an extended period with Tua coming out and saying when he comes back kind of thing, making it sound like we could miss him for an extended period. But from what I've seen, he's back at practice already. So I feel like we've got Tyreek Hill this week. We know what this offense can do. We've seen it plenty of times. And I know obviously Bill Belichick, he's got a little knack of kind of reducing the number one weapon in opposing offenses. But I mean, good luck trying to contain Tyreek Hill. He's unguardable at the moment. And yeah, this Miami offense has looked brilliant. And I think it's definitely a bounce back week for Miami.
Yeah, Tyreek's notoriously struggled against Bill Belichick. Yeah. He's underperformed his average every single game against Bill Belichick defense. Averaging 26.7 points per game. It's hard to imagine that he's going to overproduce that. So I think, it's probably a week to potentially fade Tyreek in DFS and things like that. In your managed leagues, you've absolutely got to start him. I'm a little bit concerned about Jalen Waddle. I don't think he's healthy. I don't think that he's going to command the volume. Certainly not a player I think you can attack in DFS and things like that. But on the New England side, is there anyone you can start? I think Ramondre's kind of he's probably going to be an RB2 by volume. Kendrick Bourne feels like a flex play at best. Yeah. I was interested by Douglas. I think he looks explosive. I think he looked exciting last week. Is there anyone that you think is potentially going to kind of outproduce what they're currently at moving forward for the rest of the season?
I think Douglas, who you just mentioned, I think he's definitely a guy that I'm becoming more interested in. I know Tom's quite liked him throughout the off season when we did a show together, building the $1 million winning roster in the DFS streets. Yeah, he was high on Douglas, and it looks like he seems to now be getting more and more involved in this offense. As you mentioned, Kendrick Bourne's looked good in flashes, and this feels like one of those matches where if anyone's going to have a big game, it has to be this one, because you've got to play well to keep up with this Dolphins offense. So, yeah, Douglas is definitely somebody that I could get a little bit of interest in. Looking over there at the DFS price in 3,300, I mean that's dirt cheap, to be honest. So he's somebody I'll definitely be looking to put in if I'm in a bit of a pinch in terms of what I've got left to spend. So. Yeah, Douglas for me, but as you mentioned, Ramondre Stevenson. It's been a tough one, hasn't it, Rich? We both love Stevenson, especially last year. It's a shame to see him underwhelm a little bit this year, but I'm still hopeful that maybe
It's coming.
I'm still hopeful.
Yeah, he had a horror show of matchups to start the year, and it feels like it's, Zeke needs to disappear and go away, but it feels like Ramondre's going to get there come season end. Question from Damien in the chat, one of our YouTube members. If you do want to be a member, hit that little join button below. You get a phenomenal amount of benefits. He's asking about Donta Foreman. Is this Donta Foreman's backfield now moving forward? It's a big no for me. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think I agree, to be honest. What he did last week was incredible. I don't think anyone foresee that. I mean, despite the fact he was going to be the lead back. Yeah, that was a huge week from him. But like itself, I think Roshan Johnson, he's a guy that I've really liked as a prospect. So it's going to be good to see him get that opportunity now that he's come back from that concussion. I think it's going to be a split backfield moving forward. And if I'm putting my money down on who I prefer out of those two, especially for Dynasty, it's got to be Roshan Johnson. But I do think he's going to take on a larger role moving forward as well. Now he's back to full health.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if in 2 weeks' time, when Khalil Herbert comes back, Donta Foreman's back to being a healthy scratch every week. Yeah. He doesn't play special teams. I think he's not as good as Khalil Herbert rushing the ball, and I think he doesn't offer the versatility that Roshan Johnson does. So I think that, Donta Foreman, what he did last week was phenomenal, but I do fear he's going to get cast aside as soon as there's other options. If you're watching live, if you're watching this on YouTube and you've not hit that little subscribe button, go ahead, do it now. We have got plenty more content. Tom is back tomorrow. He'll have his DFS video out by the weekend. He will be helping you win some money. And if you hit the subscribe, you get it in your channel feed. You're not going to be missing any of the great content. Right, now, Matt, we talked about this pre-show. This was the matchup that everybody has come to hear us talk about. I'm obviously a Jets fan, as you all know. For those of you who don't know, Matt is a big Giants fan. Matt, you were telling me in the pre-show how you think the Giants are going to absolutely wax the Jets. So, who are you targeting from a fantasy perspective in this matchup?
I mean, yeah, you've kind of put what I said. I think was not quite in the glowing terms that you just mentioned there. I think it was more of it's not going to go down the ages as an amazing game, this one. So, yeah, to be honest, this is going to be a tough game to watch, I think, in terms of the Jets and Giants. Both really underwhelmed from what we hoped, I think, coming into the season. I was a little bit more skeptical on the Giants. I feel like we kind of got a little bit lucky last year to get where we got to. And, yeah, it's been tough watching this year. In terms of who I like in this matchup, I think, for me, the passing offense for both teams has been a bit of a letdown on it, I think, in terms of what they've put up. Obviously, it wasn't easy for you losing Aaron Rodgers so early, but both the Jets and Giants haven't looked great in terms of throwing the ball. It's the running backs really that I gravitate towards. Both running backs I absolutely love in terms of what they offer to the NFL. Breece Hall looked amazing as a rookie. He's come back. He looks to now have got that backfield all to himself again, and we know the explosion that he has. Saquon Barkley, you can put exactly the same words to him as well. For me, still, he's one of the best running backs in the NFL when he's healthy, and his involvement in terms of the receptions and running the ball. He's such a safe player, I think, in fantasy when he is healthy. So the running backs are the two positions, the two players that I will be targeting in this one. But beyond that, it's a game I'm not going to pay too much attention to, apart from the bragging rights at the end if the Giants do win.
Yeah, I think the pricing to me feels off. I'd rather start Breece Hall over Saquon Barkley straight up in a managed league. I think Breece Hall is a top 6 running back for me this week. Mm-hmm. To get him at 5,900 feels an absolute bargain. I'm definitely going to be building some lineups around that. I like the flyers of Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt. I think Jalen Hyatt is now, we're getting into that 70-80% route participation point. We saw that, Tyrod's pushing the ball downfield a little bit more than Danny Dimes. Mm-hmm. And it felt like last week could have had a very different stat line if he'd have hauled a couple in and perhaps got a little bit lucky. So it does feel like the Jalen Hyatt breakout could be coming. And the other guy is Darren Waller. Look, the Jets are notoriously horrendous against tight end. I feel like I say this every single week. It's, the Jets can't cover any tight ends. At 5,200, that's quite expensive for Darren Waller. But, yeah, maybe if there's better matchups to attack and at that price, it doesn't make it 9. But in your managed leagues, I think Darren Waller is a really nice plug-and-play start at tight end this week. The next matchup we got is Jacksonville at Pittsburgh. It feels like these are two offenses that can't get out of each other's way. It feels like the Jags are doing everything right, but just can't punch it into the end zone, can't kind of fully fire. And it feels like Pittsburgh basically need to have the game on the line in the fourth quarter to pull it out. We'll start with Jacksonville. Do you think that this passing offense is going to settle down? We're going to see all three of Ingram, Kirk, Ridley actually put it together in the same game? Or do you think it's just going to be Russian roulette? One of them is going to go off, but we never know which one.
I think kind of that way. For me personally, I've always been a big Christian Kirk guy, and I feel like he's been the most reliable out of this bunch. And I feel like this matchup as well could set up to be a great week for Christian Kirk going up against the Steelers, who are giving up the most fantasy points to slot wide receivers. So I think Christian Kirk, he could be in line for a really solid week again this week. But as you mentioned, just getting the whole collective together, we've yet to see it. The pieces are all there. It's just waiting for it all to line up together. So I am still hopeful. I think Trevor Lawrence has not hit the heights that we all hoped this year, but I still think he's an amazing quarterback, one of the best prospects we've seen coming into the NFL, and I feel like it is going to start to come together at some point. It's going to be tough to do it against the Seals, but as I say, I think Kirk, for me personally, is somebody I really like in terms of targeting for fantasy, both in DFS and in your managed leagues.
So this week, now your colours to mask. You got to start one. Who you starting? Christian Kirk or Calvin Ridley?
Kirk for me all day.
Yeah, fair. I'd like to put out. We're 7 weeks into the season, and I've got it wrong in my rankings every single week. So whoever I rank, I think I've got Ridley low this week. So you can probably guarantee that Ridley's going to outscore Kirk. On the Pittsburgh side of the ball, look, I'm the biggest Deontay Johnson believer out there, but it did feel like him coming back last week helped add something to this offense, and it looked better. Is that me just looking through my Deontay Johnson coloured spectacles, or do you also agree?
I mean, it's tough, Rich, because I haven't, like yourself, I've been in on Deontay Johnson. Maybe not quite to the level of yourself, because I think you understated it when you said biggest. I think that whatever's higher than that, you're there with Deontay Johnson. But it was great to see him back on the field, getting involved straight away. We know the involvement that he's had in this offense before the injury, so to come back and command such a solid target share has been great. It was interesting as well to see George Pickens actually still maintain a good level of usage in this offense. So hopefully it can gel together. And now that they've got two solid offensive weapons, maybe this offense can start taking a step forward. But it was great to see Deontay Johnson back on the field and commanding a solid target share. So I'm hopeful moving forward that he's someone we can rely on in fantasy. And I think, again, this matchup could potentially be a good one for Deontay Johnson. Yeah,
George Pickens quietly having a bit of a breakout season. Wide receiver 18 in points per game, averaging over 15 points per game. I think, he's putting it together. I wouldn't really call it a true breakout, but it's impressive. It'll be interesting to see if he keeps it up. And look, I feel like Tom's not here, so I've got to mention it. Again, Jaylen Warren outworked Najee Harris in terms of weighted opportunity share, outproduced him from fantasy points perspective. At some point, this backfield is going to be Jaylen Warren's. Hopefully, please. Just, he's so much better. Finally, maybe they need to fire Matt Canada for somebody else to realise that. The next matchup, we've got another divisional matchup. Philadelphia at Washington. It feels like this could be an absolute massacre. Sam Howell, most sacks quarterback on for basically every sack record ever. And Philly, look, they've got a great D-line and they just get sacks for fun. Do you think that this is a case of Washington's just going to be able to struggle to function because of that?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, it doesn't look great for Sam Howell, does it? I mean, he cannot be looking forward to stepping into this matchup because it's going to be a long afternoon for Sam Howell. The Eagles have looked fantastic this year in terms of Washington. Sam Howell, he's shown flashes, to be fair to him, but as you mentioned, the fact that he's getting sacked so much, that's got to catch up with you at some point. I'm worried about him in terms of the health side of things. I mean, if he's getting hit every week, it can't be good for you. The confidence as well is going to start to be lost. So I do worry that the Washington need to get this thing sorted out. But yeah, it's going to be a really tough matchup. I'm struggling to find anyone really in this Washington offense that I'll be looking to target this week going up against the Eagles. In terms of running the ball, I think the Eagles are one of the best in terms of their rush defense. It's if you're going to beat them, you kind of got to throw the ball. I think they're actually ranked as one of the worst against the wide receivers. So you could maybe build a case for somebody like a McLaurin. Curtis Samuel has quietly had a pretty solid year, looked and been that safety valve for Sam Howell. I think he's priced up at a decent price in terms of DFS, but I just worry we're not going to get that ceiling, as you mentioned. If it does become a blowout game and the Eagles get up super early, maybe we can get those garbage time points and probably from the second half onwards, because it could be over as early as that. So maybe you can build a case around these wide receivers, but yeah, I think it's going to be a long afternoon for Sam Howell.
Yeah, and I think that Curtis Samuel's a really interesting guy. Obviously, free agent at the end of the year. I think in dynasty circles, this is probably your last sell window for Curtis Samuel. I think that I think that this offense is probably going to transition away from him as we start to see them look towards the future. And I think that if you can get any sort of decent pick haul, can you get a late second, maybe something like that? Maybe, maybe it's a couple of thirds. I think now's the time to move, because I think his price is probably never going to get better. On the Philly side of the ball, look, this receiver core, we came in and we were expecting it to be, AJ Brown 1A, Devonta Smith 1B. Since week 3, AJ Brown is the wide receiver 1. Devonta Smith is the wide receiver 50. But Washington are 31st in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. Do we think this is Devonta Smith squeaky wheel game that he's going to get back?
I mean, if there's going to be a time you're going to do it, it feels like this is the matchup where it can happen. As you mentioned, AJ Brown is far past what I expected from him. We know he is an elite wide receiver, but he's on a streak of 100 wide receiving games now. I think he's up to 5, is it? I think at the moment he's been incredible for fantasy, and that's kind of taken the shine away from Devonta Smith. He's dropping in terms of his dynasty value, but as you mentioned, I think I can paint that picture of if you are going to bounce back, it's probably going to be against this Washington pass defense. So I'm hopeful he can see a bounce back. I mean, in terms of dynasty, I still think he's a solid wide receiver. We mentioned right at the top of the show, you've probably still got him in your top 12, 16 kind of range, and I think that's right. He should still be up there, despite the fact he's having a slow start, potentially a buy low. Seeing what AJ Brown's doing, people might now start to worry that Smith's going to continue to be an absence from this offense. So somebody I'd definitely maybe look to target as a buy low in dynasty.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo everything you've just said. And former curse, I presume this is Kev taking shots. We're talking about Philly, Washington. Reveal, is it a Washington hoodie that you're wearing?
It's just a super dry one, but I know Kev, he likes to try and wind me up, and yeah, he's got me there on the colour scheme.
Yeah, I think subconsciously you've picked it out just for him. Look, if you are here, if you are watching live and you're not a member, you're missing out. We've got all my Dynasty Survival kit. We'll have my rookie guide coming out in February, March time, plus all of Tom's DFS content. You can hit that join button below and you get access to all of that and so much more. Honestly, you will not regret it. I guarantee you will love it. Houston at Carolina. This is just not a sexy slate, is it? It feels like another bad matchup. But look, Carolina 31st in adjusted fantasy points to running back. We were talking in the member Discord earlier. We've seen Dameon Pierce is being called both a sell high and a buy low right now. I don't think anybody knows how to match him. It feels like this could be a really juicy matchup. So, Matt, are you buying Pierce as someone that could potentially be better for the second half of the year, or do you think that this is an opportunity to sell because the bottom's fallen out?
I mean, I've never been in on Dameon Pierce, to be honest. So this is, if I do have any shares of him, I'm probably clinging on to that. That is my selling point, knowing the matchup that we've got this week and clinging on to that in the hopes that somebody falls for it and takes him. There's a chance that he can have a good week this week. As you mentioned, this is a juicy matchup for the running backs and Dameon Pierce, while he hasn't looked great at all this year, this is going to be that game. If he can have a bounce back, it will be this one. But yeah, for me personally, in terms of dynasty, somebody I don't have many shares of, if any at all. But if I did, I'm probably looking to sell either on the basis of this matchup or in the hopes he does have a good game and then look to move him on. But long term, yeah, I'm not there with Dameon Pierce.
Yeah, I've never loved Dameon Pierce. I didn't like him as a prospect coming out, but it does feel like there's something there that he's undervalued for the next 4 or 5 weeks. And I think that if you can perhaps buy low now to spin him off for a profit in a month's time, he's got a decent run of games coming up. I think this offense is looking good. I think maybe that's the move to make. But from a weekly slate, I have to say I really love this game. Like, as much as I'm slagging off the entire slate, I think that no Robert Woods means hopefully Nico Collins, Tank Dell are both going to be sort of 90% snap share guys. I think they could have a good week. I love the idea of the double stack going to CJ Stroud with Collins and Dell. You got Adam Thielen, who basically is the entire Carolina offense as a bring back. And I think if Miles Sanders is out, this is a plug and play option for Chuba Hubbard at 4,800. And yeah, I think Chuba Hubbard's got the potential to be I think I'm probably going to end up ranking him inside my top maybe 12 if Miles Sanders is out. And if Miles Sanders is active, obviously that, I'll walk that back a bit. But yeah, if you could want to attack one matchup, maybe for the high ceiling, it feels like this could be quite concentrated in a few players that you can kind of tuck in. Matt, am I talking absolute nonsense or do you sort of see it?
No, I mean, I like it. You could do talking in terms of DFS, CJ Stroud start with Nico Collins, as you mentioned, with Robert Woods out, the bring back with Adam Thielen, who seems to have rejuvenated his career this year. I think that's maybe why Kev popped up in the chat. He's been waiting for this one, I think, because he's been an Adam Thielen for a long time. So yeah, I can see it. I can see this being that matchup that maybe on the face of it you don't like, but I think when you actually look at the overall slate and this matchup in terms of the defenses, both struggling defenses, the offenses, Houston have seemed to have stepped up with CJ Stroud taking over the reins, and the Panthers have a couple of nice pieces in that offense as well. So yeah, I quite like it, to be honest, as a bit of an under the radar matchup to target in DFS and as a whole in terms of this week.
Might go and have a chat with Tom to run it past him, and I'm sure he'll tell me that I'm complete nonsense talking rubbish. We got a question in the chat though. Josh is saying, would you trade Derek Carr, George Kittle, Jameson Williams for Andrews and Zach Wilson, 20-man PPR? So I'm viewing this as, Kittle, Jameson Williams is worthless to me. Okay. Zach Wilson I know it's 20-man quarterbacks are worthwhile, but let's be honest, he's worthless as well. So it's basically Derek Carr or George Kittle for Mark Andrews. I don't love it if Russell Wilson is your only other quarterback, quite frankly. I think that's a lot to pay for what feels like a small upgrade.
Yeah, I think in terms of if you just look at the trade-off, it is pretty equal, but you made the point of it being a 20-man league. That kind of favours the quarterback. You're going to be in a hole if you don't have two solid quarterbacks, and I just worry taking on Zach Wilson. He's not the long-term answer. You're then stuck with Russell Wilson, who, while he's looked good in terms of the fantasy points, the long-term future over with the Broncos is in question. So for me personally, it just feels like a little bit too much risk going away from Derek Carr, who, although he's had his struggles this year, I feel like he's still the long-term answer for the Saints moving forward. So, yeah, given the fact that the format of the league and the fact that he's 20-man, kind of makes me lean with the Carr side.
Yeah, you say the long-term feature of Russ is questionable. I think the short-term feature of Russ is questionable.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't be shocked if he's benched before the end of the season. Absolutely.
True.
The next matchup, we're diving across to the northwest. Got myself confused there. Cleveland at Seattle. Now, Cleveland are absolutely phenomenal at defense. They are fourth in adjusted fantasy points allowed at the running back, third against wide receivers, third against tight ends. Normally, the entire Seattle offense, you got Kenneth Walker, DK, Lockett, JSN. It feels like they're plug and play. Do you feel any confidence starting them this week against Cleveland?
As you mentioned, I think when you look at the stats, this Cleveland defense has been incredible this year. Last week, what Myles Garrett was doing was unhuman-like, but he's just, yeah, he's a different kind of breed. So yeah, it's a really tough matchup for the Seahawks. As you mentioned, they've got pieces in this offense. It's going to be hard to trust them against the Browns. I think for me personally, I still like Kenneth Walker. I think the opportunity that he's getting over there in this backfield has been great this year. I think he has popped up on the injury report, but I feel like he should be good to go this weekend. So he's probably the one for me that I feel safest in starting because of the opportunity that he's getting at the running back position. And we know how much Pete Carroll loves to run the ball and give his running backs the opportunities. So for me, he's probably the one guy that I'd trust most out of these. But as you mentioned, the matchup it isn't great on paper. So yeah, just Walker for me, I think, in terms of who to target.
Yeah, no, I think he's getting enough volume. You know, I talked about Zach Charbonnet on the Tuesday show that he's just not involved at all. He's potentially injured again this week. So I think Walker could get there on volume alone. You know, the big difference we've seen with Walker this year from last year is that tackle for loss. You can see on the screen. He's only had 10% of his attempts tackled behind the line of scrimmage this year. Last year, that was just over 15%. Sounds like a small difference, but that is a massive difference in terms of keeping those chains moving. On the Cleveland side, obviously, Deshaun Watson's out again. I have no idea what the hell's happening there. It's just absolute chaos. I'm going to stay away from it. The running back position is probably the only one that I'm interested in. Looking like Jerome Ford's not going to play. Kareem Hunt seems like the logical plug and play, but I do like Pierre Strong. I think that there is potentially some upside at 4,300 in DFS this week. We saw him look explosive last week when he got the chance. I think he could be a flyer if you're looking to try and, you know, be contrarian in some tournament plays. He could be a guy that I quite like.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Rich. Pierre Strong was a guy that I actually really liked coming into the season when he was over with the Patriots of being that kind of 1B, I guess, to Ramondre Stevenson when he was going to be the lead guy. Obviously got traded over to the Browns. So the fact that they've even traded for him gives me a little signal that they kind of like what they see in Strong and getting him over what he can offer, both in terms of special teams, but I think as a running back as well. So the fact that now he's going alongside Kareem Hunt rather than Ramondre Stevenson just gets me even more excited, to be honest, about Pierre Strong. This offense, we know how great they are at running the ball. Jerome Ford looked fantastic last week before he went down injured. So it's a shame to see him go down because he's a guy that I've really liked in terms of dynasty. But yeah, I think Pierre Strong in this backfield, he's going to be the underrated guy. People are going to gravitate towards Kareem Hunt because of obviously the touchdown he got last week and he's shown those flashes. But for me personally, I think Pierre Strong, and I think he is going to command probably. I'm gonna go out on a limb, Rich. I think he's going to have the most touches out of the two running backs in this matchup. And for the price point you're getting in DFS, I think he's definitely worth a play as a ceiling. Yeah, long shot, would you call it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my best ball shares are really hoping it's Pierre Strong breakout week because I think before the trade to Cleveland, he was my most rostered player. I quickly stopped drafting him once he ended up in Cleveland. But yeah, I've got an awful lot of shares that could do with some points. So yeah, hopefully Kareem Hunt continues to be average and Pierre Strong gets some work. Diving across, KC at Denver. Feels like this could be an absolute boat race. Any hope that Denver kind of keep it close, or are you just expecting KC to absolutely blow out the water?
I think it's going to be hard to contain the Chiefs. Obviously, what Patrick Mahomes, we know that he's going to go down as one of the greats, I think, in terms of quarterbacks in the NFL. This offense seems to now be starting to click again. The defense as well for the Chiefs has been really good this year. To be honest, it kind of carried them at the start of the year, but now I feel like the offense is starting to hit a rhythm as well. So it's going to be really tough for the Broncos, who are kind of out of form at the minute, haven't looked too good this season. Yeah, it's going to be a tough one for them to keep up with the Chiefs. Mahomes, Travis Kelce playing out of his skin at the minute. It's going to be interesting to see if Taylor Swift turns up because we know what that's doing for Travis Kelce and his fantasy performances. The mainstream media likes to ram that down his throat. So, yeah, I think the Chiefs should easily win this one. I'd be shocked if they don't. I still think all Chiefs players have got to be targets. We know that the Broncos run defense is one of the worst in terms of fantasy production. So Isaiah Pacheco becomes interesting in this one. But as I say, Patrick Mahomes, Rashee Rice as well. It's been great to see him starting to get a little bit of momentum. Looked fantastic last week. I think he's now commanding that wide receiver one role in this offense. So that's really great to see. I think he's going to be a big part of the offense moving forward. But it's gonna be tough yet again for the Broncos. You can paint that picture, I guess, that down early, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, down early, trying to catch up, garbage time points could be in play for somebody like Sutton, who's had a pretty good season, to be honest, going a little bit under the radar. But overall, it's going to be tough for the Broncos to keep up with the Chiefs, I think.
Yeah, and look, you mentioned Rashie Rice. This is a pro Rashie Rice podcast show.
Absolutely.
Dynasty-wise, Matt, what would you pay for Rashie Rice right now, do you think?
I think I'd go as far as a late first, to be honest. I think to get him in terms of dynasty, as I say, I think he's on a great offense. But we kind of tainted this Chiefs being the wide receiver one in this offense isn't great because Mahomes spread the ball so much. But I feel like he's got a guy now in Rice that he trusts. We've seen his usage in the red zone. Travis Kelce's not going anywhere, but Rashee Rice, he's definitely putting himself clear of the other wide receivers in this offense. A high-powered offense, being the wide receiver one in that offense. Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with a late first in Dynasty.
Yeah, it's exactly where I've got him. He's my wide receiver 36 currently. I'd pay a late first for him. I'm a big fan. I thought he was raw. I thought he was going to take time. The fact that he's, we're talking week 8 and he's already established himself, I think is phenomenal. So I'm expecting, him to keep ticking up. The other guy that I'm intrigued by, and I think that when you're talking about, KC going up early, maybe Denver throwing ball to kind of catch up late. Marvin Mims, we've seen all the talk with Jerry Jeudy. It feels like he's gone. I think that, it feels like it's kind of toothpaste out the tube at this point. We're probably not going to get it back in and keep Jerry Jeudy in Denver. Cortland Sutton could potentially be a free agent at the end of the year. I think Marvin Mims, whether that be dynasty, whether it be redraft, I went and picked him up off waiver wire in my home league this afternoon. I think he's a really nice little flyer that could potentially have some real upside, yes, in this game as a dart throw, but also moving forward for the rest of the season, because I think we're going to start to see this offense realize, right, who's going to be here in 2024 and beyond. Yeah. We might see Russell Wilson benched. We might see, Jerry Jeudy traded, and that's where we start to build around guys like Marvin Mims. Moving over to the next question, Baltimore at Arizona. Baltimore, obviously, that phenomenal win last week. Now, are they going to have a letdown game in Arizona, or are they going to keep trucking?
I think they've got to keep trucking, haven't they, against the Cardinals? I think, to be fair to the Cardinals, they've actually been a little bit better than I think many of us expected this year. But the Ravens, they seem to have hit a good spot at this moment. They seem to be riding a bit of high. Lamar Jackson's looked incredible. I've seen a lot of people, I know Tom obviously defends his guy, but I've seen a lot of people question the abilities of Lamar Jackson. I mean, don't understand that at all, because I think he's looked better than ever this year, to be honest. So, Lamar Jackson, I think he's going to be great in this matchup. It's a great matchup for the running back. So guys like Gus Edwards, who seems to have claimed this backfield now, I think he's a really interesting play this week. And as I say, I think the whole Ravens offense, it seems to have hit a good note at this moment in time. Zay Flowers has been incredible in terms of a rookie coming in and commanding the targets he's getting as well. So, I think that the good times continue to roll. That'll be music to Tom's ear, I'm sure, because, the Ravens, I think they should get another comfortable victory in this one.
Yeah, it's an amazing matchup for Lamar. Arizona 31st in adjusted fantasy points to the quarterback position. He's an absolute smash play. Yes, he's going to be expensive in DFS, but hopefully you're paying up for that big, huge boom week. Really interesting around Gus Edwards. I talked about it on the Tuesday show. After that Justice Hill fumble, which went down as Lamar's fumble, but I can assure you it was Justice Hill's fault. Yeah. Gus Edwards basically got a lot of the work, and it'll be interesting to see if that's a trend that continues through the rest of the season. On the Arizona side, Marquise Brown, I was here talking about how good he's been, how consistent he's been. He's put up 2 absolute stinkers in a row. Hopefully he can bounce back. Maybe it's, catch up. Maybe it's that garbage time. But the guy I wanted to pick your brains on, McBride, Zach Ertz is now on IR. McBride, 18.2% target share last week. It's taken a hell of a lot longer than I expected for him to start seeing relevant work. Do you think this is a McBride breakout that could be pending?
I'm really hopeful. Rich McBride's a guy that I loved as a prospect, and it's funny that Zach Ertz kind of came over and did what he did to Dallas Goedert over with the Eagles. He did the same to McBride. It's been torture seeing Ertz involved. Obviously came back from the injury. I was hopeful that McBride was going to continue to be the starting tight end, but it looked like it was Ertz to start the year. But Even before this injury, McBride was slowly starting to get more and more involved in this offense. Now with Ertz hitting IR, I'm fully in on McBride. I think he's going to be a key part of this offense. I think he's going to be a great safety valve for Dobbs to target in terms of the position he plays, and I think you could see a good amount of targets as well. So love him for this matchup. I think Dynasty as well, definitely somebody I'm looking to acquire if possible. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more tough now, but I still think the value you can get in Matt is going to be better than what it could be in a few weeks' time if he does take over this offense as being a top tight end. So yeah, I'm definitely hopeful for Trey McBride, and I feel like this could be the game that we start to see it.
Absolutely. And then talking about breakout performances, it feels like this Cincinnati offense, do you know they've scored the second fewest offensive points so far this year? More only than your New York Giants. I just wanted to get that again. They now face a tough matchup with a vaunted 49ers defense. Are we going to start to see him get right? It looks like Joe Burrow might finally be healthy. Do you have any faith?
I mean, I'm just shocked that we're even mentioning the Bengals in the same breath as the Giants in terms of what they're doing passing the ball, because this Bengals offense looked incredible last year. The fall has been brutal, and as you mentioned, a lot of it has been down to Joe Burrow, obviously coming back from that injury that he picked up during the preseason. So yeah, I feel like when we last saw him in action, he looked like he was starting to get things back on track, coming off the bye week. On paper, it doesn't look like an easier matchup, but I still feel like Joe Burrow is now going to start taking that step forward, and I think you've got to start targeting some of these pieces on this offense. You've got it highlighted there. I think T. Higgins is definitely somebody I'd be looking to buy low on at the moment. He was a guy that I think was primed for a breakout at the start of the year when Burrow was slowly starting to come back from his injury, and then missed a bit of time himself. So he's definitely somebody that I'm looking to target in Dynasty, because I think the ceiling there for him in this offense when Joe Burrow is healthy is super high. So yeah, T. Higgins, I like him as a buy low. This matchup doesn't look like it's going to be that matchup that he could break out, but I think there's every chance if Joe Burrow's back to 100%.
Yeah, maybe it's a buy low now because this is a disgusting matchup and maybe he's going to break out next week. But yeah, wide receiver 69, this is a guy we were taking in the second round, maybe in the third round of, best ball drafts at the beginning of the year. I still think the talent is there, and I think this offense is going to get right. We forget last year, first 5 weeks of the season, they were horrendous. They suddenly shifted from this pathetic under center run game to actually realizing if we, run from the same offense that we pass from, defenses don't know what's coming. And it completely changed their offense. Obviously, it's a little later this year, but hopefully we can start to see some improvement. Joe Mixon, as you can see, he's not scored above 14 fantasy points this year. I think that he goes as this offense goes. Hopefully, if the offense starts scoring more points, starts, putting the ball in the red zone around the goal line a little bit more, we might see Joe Mixon start to tick up. On the San Francisco side, it feels like it could be a George Kittle week. No Deebo Samuel, Cincinnati 31st in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the tight end position. Do you have any faith, or is this just one of those, it's George Kittle, so who the hell knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, Kittle looked good this past week, obviously, with Samuel being out. He had probably one of the best games he's had so far this year. So I think, yeah, you can definitely create that scenario where Kittle is the guy that's going to benefit from Deebo being out. Brandon Ayuk was a little bit of a disappointment last week. I think where you guys were talking about it on your show. I even mentioned about should it be a start. I can't remember who I mentioned him over, but everything was pointing towards Brandon Ayuk having a huge game. Didn't quite turn out the way that we hoped, but still saw plenty of involvement. And I think Brandon Ayuk in this one, if the Bengals do turn up and they do start playing better offense, maybe that can force the 49ers into playing better. But it sounds like Brock Purdy's not going to be playing with the concussion as well. So you've then got to factor in the fact that Sam Darnold's going to be the starting quarterback. He's a guy that could definitely target George Kittle. So I think, yeah, Kittle could be a play as a volume guy in a game that could potentially put up some points for us.
Yeah, you touched on Sam Darnold there. Any confidence in him this week?
I mean, the Bengals haven't been too bad on defense, to be honest. As we mentioned, it's more been the offense that have struggled. So it's on paper, it doesn't look a particularly great matchup. And Sam Darnold, we've not seen him play for a while. And when we last saw him, it was let's just say it was a bit of a roller coaster in terms of the emotions we went through when starting Sam Darnold. So it's going to be interesting seeing him in this offense. We know how quarterbacks have looked when stepping into this offense. So maybe Sam Darnold can surprise a few. And I think in DFS, the fact that he's going for 4,300, it's dirt cheap for a quarterback. Gives you so much flexibility in what you can do with the rest of your roster build. So yeah, I can paint a picture of maybe starting him as a flyer in DFS, but in my managed leagues, I think, yeah, I'm struggling. If I'm having to rely on Sam Darnold as my starting quarterback, I think I'm in a bit of a tough situation.
Well, I'm nailing my colours to the mast here. I think it's Sam Darnold week. I've got him as he's my QB 12 in this week. I think
nice.
I think there's a lot of potential there. I love the idea of him with, this Shanahan scheme. Maybe it's just the fact that I've picked him up and having to start him in Scott Fishbowl this week because I've got Deshaun Watson and Brock Purdy as my quarterbacks. But so yeah, I've got Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. So yeah, pray for me out there, people, because it could be messy. But I really believe that he's a perfect fit for this offense. And I think that, we've seen Mr. Irrelevant be phenomenal. I think Sam Darnold's got far more arm talent than Brock Purdy could ever dream of. And I think that if Shanahan can be in his ear, I think I've got to plug and play him. So yeah, I really like him. I think, as you said, 4,300 for quarterback on DraftKings is absolute criminal. And I think he could be a player that you can slot in and open up some really exciting lineups. Certainly some great stackable options in hopefully what should be one of the better, higher scoring games this week. Moving to the kind of later window, Chicago at the Chargers. We can kind of fly through this because it feels like it could be horrendous. Bagent's starting again. Do you have any kind of hopes for this Chicago offense with him under center week 2? Now people have got some film on him.
I mean, he looked all right, didn't he, last week? I think he surprised a few because we all expected him to just bum out basically and do nothing. He looked okay, I guess you could say, but it's going to be tough, I think, for him to do the same again this week. As you mentioned, we've now got a bit more film on him. Opposing defense can be a little bit more clued up on what he offers, what his strengths are. So, I think it's going to be a tough week for him. DJ Moore, I think he's always a guy that can put you up numbers when called upon. We know that the yard after catchability that he's got. I think he could potentially be a play for this Bears offense, but beyond that, I think it's hard to trust anyone. We mentioned about the running backs. That's going to be a little bit more confusing with Johnson coming back this week. So for me personally, DJ Moore may be the only one that I can trust this week for the Bears.
Yeah, it feels mad, doesn't it? As I said, DJ Moore's under the radar wide receiver 6 overall. Obviously, a lot of that is off the back of essentially a 50-point performance. But the Chargers 30th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. Feels like it could be a really good matchup for him. But I just can't trust Bagent. I think we've seen this time and time again in the NFL, certainly over the last 15 years that I've been following it in depth. You see a quarterback comes up, has a good kind of out of nowhere week 1 performance, whether that be as a backup because of an injury in the middle of a game or, the first start, particularly someone like Bagent, where we've hardly got any college film of him and stuff. And then you see second week, they just turn into a pumpkin. And yeah, it's a phenomenal story. I'd love for him to be, something moving forward, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's horrendous and basically this turns into a very, very one-sided affair. Keen to pick your brains, Matt, though. Quentin Johnson, I've been quite critical of him, calling him, a bust because basically no first-round receivers have scored as few fantasy points through 7 weeks as he has and gone on for success. Do you hold out any hope in him moving forward?
I mean, it's tough, Rich. He's a guy that I quite liked as a prospect. I had him pretty highly ranked in my wide receiver rankings. It's been tough to see him not really turn into what we hoped. He got a prime opportunity when Mark Williams went down. I thought this has to be it. There's got to be the moment that he takes that step forward, and we've just not seen it. And that is the big red flag for me. I mean, before that, you could paint the picture of obviously the opportunity he was getting, but the fact that he's come in, Josh Palmer's looked to be a solid wide receiver too now in this offense, and Johnson's yet to do anything. So yeah, alarm bells definitely ringing. I'm not fully out on him at this moment in time, but for sure he's slid down my rankings and not really somebody that I'm willing to take a chance on in terms of buying, because you could say, yeah, you could go out and buy him low, but I think the price you still got to pay is probably too much. Because there's obviously risk attached to that as well. So For me, it's just kind of a hold and hope in the leagues that I do have him, but I paid a premium to get him, so it's could be an expensive mistake. I've had this before with Nikhil Harry, and my alarm bells are ringing, Rich. I've been through this before, and I feel like I'm going to be left holding the bag yet again.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because as you said, you don't want to sell, but who knows? The final matchup, Monday Night Football, the Raiders at the Lions. Who knows what's going on with the Raiders right now? We've got potentially could be one of 3 starting quarterbacks. I don't think it's going to be Hoyer. Jimmy G supposedly back practicing, but might not play. Do we see O'Connell? Does that give you any confidence in either of these receivers? Devontae Adams is a star. Jacoby Myers is the wide receiver 12, despite the fact that he's missed a game. Do you think that we've just got to plug and play him despite who's going to be under center?
I think, to be honest, Rich, I think you're spot on there. Devontae Adams, it's tough to sit such a superstar. We know what Devontae Adams is all about when he's healthy, when he's got a quarterback that's healthy. He's still one of the best wide receivers in the game. And as you mentioned, Jacoby Myers has been a real good success story this offseason, obviously going over from the Patriots. He was that feel-good factor over there with the Patriots, and then the fact that he got moved, coming to the Rams, and the Patriots replaced him with Juju, pretty much a like-for-like replacement, and that's blown up in their face, and Myers has looked incredible, to be honest, for the Raiders. So it's been really good to see him get the opportunity and really thrive in this offense as their slot wide receiver. So I think Myers is definitely somebody you can look to target, whoever starts at quarterback, because he is such a great safety valve for whichever quarterback starting. For Jimmy G, if Jimmy G is back, I think that's going to elevate Devontae Adams and unlock a little bit more than what we've had the last couple of weeks when Jimmy G's been out. So I think you've got to start both of them, and no matter what the quarterback is, you're hoping for the best, really, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the running back position, it feels disgusting after what he did last year, but I feel like you've kind of got to try and get away from Josh Jacobs this week. I think he's not in my top 18. Look, he's averaging 13 points per game. That's despite seeing almost 6 targets a game. And Detroit phenomenal against the running back position. 3rd in adjusted fantasy points allowed. It feels harsh because you probably paid an absolute premium to bring Josh Jacobs in. You certainly can't touch him in DFS. Not a guy that I want in any sort of showdown lineup or anything. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think I do, Rich, to be honest. Jacobs never really been a guy I've been super in, to be honest. Coming into this season, I think I ranked him lower than consensus because I felt like a lot of his value was baked into the opportunity he was getting. And to be honest, that opportunity has carried through into this year, but what he's been able to do with it has been nowhere near what he did last year. So, it's a real tough situation if you have gone out and bought Jacobs for a premium, because he's getting the volume, which is something we always target when it comes to running backs. We want guys that are getting that opportunity, but Jacobs just not putting it all together. It's not going to be an easy matchup for him going up against the Lions as well. So the matchup doesn't look great either. As you mentioned, maybe this could be the chance of maybe getting off him and looking elsewhere at running back, because I personally don't see it. I'm not a big fan, to be honest.
Yeah, and then Jamal Gibbs looks like David Montgomery's going to be out. We saw him get 84% opportunity share. He got the workload, absolutely produced over 27 points. Vegas are terrible against running backs. Do you think this is another Jamal Gibbs back-to-back weeks going to be back to kind of fantasy superstar?
I think it's got to be, to be honest, Rich. I mean, when you get a running back that's the lead guy in this Lions offense, they've not let you down, whether that's been David Montgomery to start the year. Now Jameer Gibbs is getting the opportunity of being the lead back and getting all of the touches pretty much at the moment. So I think he's got to be a start going up against the Raiders, as you mentioned, one of the worst run defenses in the league. It sets up for a perfect game for him. We know what he can do both on the ground, through the air as well. He's explosive when he gets out into space. That's how they should use him. I think that's where they're going to maximize his potential. So, I love Jameer Gibbs as being the lead back in this offense going up against a pretty poor Raiders defense.
Yeah, top 5 back for me this week. I think he's
definitely
an absolute plug and play, definitely. Well, that's it. That's the show. We've gone through every single matchup. If you've made it an hour and 12 minutes into the show and you've not hit the thumbs up or the subscribe button, do us a favor, hit those buttons. And Matt, thank you ever so much for stepping in for Tom whilst he's off, putting his feet up and enjoying some warm weather. Remind the viewers, the listeners that have made it this far, where can they find you? Where can they find your work?
Yeah, just quickly want to say thank you for having me on, Richard. It's been great to talk to you and try and fill in for Tom. Obviously, can't do the same level of DFS information that Tom can do, but it's been great to take a chance and fill in for him. But yeah, you can catch me on Twitter, or X, I guess as it is now called, at MattFFDynasty. That's where I do most of my content now. Kind of took a little bit of a step back, but I do weekly weather reports over there. People seem to really enjoy them, find them useful in terms of DFS and fantasy as well, and even for the guys that do the betting stuff as well. So yeah, you can catch that over there on Twitter. But apart from that, just thanks again for having me on, Rich. It's been fun as always.
No, it's been awesome. Absolutely go and check out Matt's work. The fancy weatherman, I find them incredibly useful. Certainly help kind of contribute them into my start-sit decisions and my weekly rankings. If you're looking for Tom's DFS content and some more focused stuff, he will be back later this week. We will be getting a DFS pod out, a DFS show out, sorry. And obviously, if you're a YouTube DFS member, you can get his full write-up of this slate, his picks, his values, good chalk, bad chalk, all of that beautiful stuff in the Discord. You can hit the join button down below to access that. But best of luck this week. As I said, it looks like a horror slate. Let's hope for some touchdowns and some high scoring, and we'll be back very soon.